The piercing wail of police sirens shattered the pre-dawn silence of Dubai's exclusive Emirates Hills community. Red and blue lights danced across the marble facades of multi-million-dollar villas as emergency vehicles converged on a sprawling six-bedroom mansion overlooking the golf course. Inside, a scene unfolded that would haunt even the most seasoned investigators. Edward Langston, a prominent international banker, lay lifeless in his home office, while his wife, Charlotte, still dressed in her designer nightgown, sat calmly in the living room, hands folded neatly in her lap. British expatriate wife murders banking executive husband in Dubai villa. The headlines would scream the next morning. But the story that unraveled in the following weeks revealed a labyrinth of lies, betrayal, and a double life stretching across two continents. The carefully curated image of perfection that Edward and Charlotte Langston had displayed on social media was about to disintegrate in the most spectacular fashion. Charlotte Langston, née Walker, had her beginnings in a modest, middle-class family in London's Hampstead neighborhood. The daughter of a secondary school teacher and a librarian, Charlotte displayed extraordinary drive and intelligence from a young age. Teachers at the prestigious North London Collegiate School often praised her for excelling both academically and socially, a blend of sharp intellect and natural charm that would later serve her well in the competitive world of international finance. After graduating with first-class honors from the London School of Economics, Charlotte rapidly made a name for herself in investment banking. By her late 20s, she was already recognized as a rising star at Goldman Sachs, admired for her keen, analytical mind and an uncanny ability to close complex deals. She was the kind of person who made everything look effortless, recalled Maria Torres, a former colleague. She could work on multi-million-dollar deals all day and still show up looking immaculate for client drinks in the evening. It was at the Global Financial Summit in Singapore that Charlotte first crossed paths with Edward Langston. At the time, Edward was a senior executive at HSBC's international division, and he immediately caught her attention during a panel discussion on emerging markets. Their eyes met across the conference room, remembered Alan Chang, who had been seated next to Charlotte. It was like something out of a movie. Edward, tall and distinguished with prematurely gray hair that only enhanced his charm, approached Charlotte during the evening networking event. What began as a discussion about market volatility in Asian economies quickly turned personal, and the two found themselves engrossed in conversation long after the venue staff began stacking chairs around them. Their romance unfolded with the same intensity and precision that defined their professional lives. Weekend getaways to Paris, holidays in the Maldives, and elaborate, meticulously planned dates marked their courtship. Just months later, Edward proposed aboard a private yacht in the Mediterranean, presenting Charlotte with a flawless 5-carat diamond ring. Their wedding at the iconic Burj Al Arab in Dubai was a grand affair that graced the society pages. Guests flew in from around the globe to witness their union, the bride in a custom-made Vera Wang gown and the groom in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford tuxedo. Together, they seamlessly settled into Dubai's expatriate lifestyle. Edward's position as regional director for HSBC's private banking division afforded them luxuries most could only dream of. Their $10 million villa in Emirates Hills became the setting for elegant dinner parties frequented by Dubai's elite. Meanwhile, Charlotte, having transferred to Goldman Sachs' Dubai office, quickly established herself in the city's social scene. As a couple, they embodied the glamour of Dubai's expatriate community. Their Instagram profiles showcased a life of unadulterated perfection, the two of them mingling with British aristocracy at royal events, attending charity galas at the Armani Hotel, embarking on weekend desert safaris in their Range Rover, and enjoying idyllic holidays in the Seychelles. They were always laughing, always touching, recalled Olivia Watson, a close friend of Charlotte. They were the couple we all wanted to be. Yet beneath this seemingly flawless exterior lay a shadow that would come to define their lives: infertility. Years into their marriage, Charlotte and Edward began IVF treatments at Dubai's premier fertility clinic. While the process was emotionally grueling, friends observed how it seemed to strengthen their bond. Charlotte confided in Olivia about Edward's unwavering support, his optimism, a constant reassurance through failed attempts. their life appeared to thrive nonetheless. Their property portfolio expanded with a penthouse in Dubai Marina, a ski chalet in Switzerland, and a pied-à-terre in London's Mayfair. Edward's banking acumen proved invaluable in Dubai's booming real estate market, with investments multiplying effortlessly. However, cracks began to form beneath this glossy surface. The first signs were subtle, so subtle that Charlotte initially dismissed them. Edward's business trips grew longer and more frequent. While extended travel was not unusual in international banking, his behavior shifted in ways that unnerved her. The daily video calls they had once shared became sporadic, his explanations often vague. Financial anomalies started to emerge. Charges at upscale restaurants on days Edward was supposedly in meetings, hotel stays in cities he hadn't mentioned. With her background in finance, Charlotte noticed these irregularities, but wrote them off as corporate expenses or accounting errors. Then came the more personal changes: password updates to shared accounts, supposedly for cybersecurity, and the creation of new email addresses, which Edward attributed to client confidentiality. Dinner conversations, once vibrant and engaging, became stilted. Edward seemed distracted, often checking his phone. Friends began noticing too. "He used to be so present," noted Michael Chang, a fellow banker. Suddenly he was always stepping away to take calls or leaving early with some excuse. Their celebrated dinner parties became less frequent, and even when held, Edward often appeared distant or preoccupied. His unexplained absences multiplied. Weekend trips to London, alleged emergency board meetings, and last-minute flights to Singapore all seemed innocuous until Charlotte discovered many had never been scheduled. The unease deepened with strange occurrences: silent phone calls, late-night text messages quickly dismissed, and credit card statements revealing purchases at luxury jewelry stores, yet no new gifts ever appeared. The man who had once been an open book had become an enigma. As the year drew to a close, Charlotte found herself consumed by constant anxiety, dissecting every interaction, every unexplained absence. What she believed to be a life of perfection began to feel like an intricate facade. Little did she know that what she had uncovered was just the beginning of a deception so deep it would lead to a violent confrontation. The mounting doubts finally compelled Charlotte to act. Hiring a private investigator was not a decision she made lightly. Every missed anniversary, every unanswered question, every fragment of doubt piled up like grains of sand until the weight tipped the balance. Sitting in the discreet office of Khalid al-Rashid, a former Dubai police detective turned private investigator, Charlotte nervously gripped the leather armrests of her chair. "I need to know what my husband is doing when he says he's at work," she whispered, her voice tinged with desperation. Khalid, a veteran of such cases, would soon uncover a truth far more shocking than either of them anticipated. Her manicured nails pressed into the leather armrests of the chair. "I need to know what my husband does when he says he's at work," Charlotte murmured, her voice barely audible. Khalid, a seasoned private investigator with years of experience handling cases within Dubai's expatriate community, recognized the familiar signs of a marriage buckling under the weight of suspicion. Yet, even he couldn't anticipate that this case would become one of the most intricate and tragic of his career. The investigation commenced with surgical precision. Khalid assembled his elite team, a group of former intelligence officers, digital forensic specialists, and financial investigators. They combined old-school physical surveillance with cutting-edge digital tracking to map Edward Mitchell's every move. Each deviation from his official schedule was meticulously documented and cross-referenced. The first significant red flag surfaced within days. After leaving HSBC's regional headquarters in downtown Dubai, Edward's Mercedes took an unexpected detour. Instead of heading to the business dinner he had mentioned to Charlotte, he navigated through the quieter streets of Jumeirah, eventually stopping at Alif Towers, a luxury apartment complex known for its discretion and high-profile residents. "We found something," Khalid told Charlotte a few days later, spreading a series of photographs across his desk. The images showed Edward entering the building through a private entrance, carrying shopping bags from high-end boutiques. Security footage revealed a pattern. Edward visited this location 3 to 4 times a week, and always following the same route to avoid main roads and traffic cameras. But it was one particular photo that shattered Charlotte's composure. A balcony shot showing Edward in casual clothes she didn't recognize, holding a young child. Two other children played at his feet, their features unmistakably similar to his own. The twins appear to be about 3 years old, Khalid explained gently. The younger one is approximately 18 months. Further investigation revealed that the apartment had been purchased years earlier under a shell company named Desert Rose Holdings. A trail of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands showed regular financial transfers sustaining a parallel life: private school tuition, luxury car payments, and designer shopping sprees. Digital forensics uncovered an entirely separate world: a hidden email account, multiple social media profiles under slight variations of Edward's name, and an intricately compartmentalized digital life that hinted at years of meticulous planning. The final blow came with the discovery of a marriage certificate filed with Dubai's Islamic Affairs Department. The document, bearing Edward's legal name and his conversion to Islam, confirmed his marriage to Leila Karim 4 years earlier. It was legitimate, complete with official seals and notarization. Leila Karim, as Khalid's team uncovered, was no ordinary woman. Born into a prominent merchant family, she held a PhD in chemical engineering from Imperial College London and served as a research director at Dubai Science Park. Her family's influential connections in Dubai's business community had even helped Edward establish key banking relationships, a bitter irony that wasn't lost on Charlotte. Khalid's investigation painted a vivid picture of Leila's life. Her family, a perfect balance of traditional values and modern ambitions, had played a significant role in shaping her path. Her father, Abdallah Karim, sat on the boards of several government-linked companies, while her mother wielded quiet influence in Dubai's education sector. Edward and Leila had met at a renewable energy conference in Abu Dhabi 6 years earlier, just 3 years into his marriage with Charlotte. Their Islamic marriage ceremony had occurred during one of his supposed business trips to Singapore. The apartment purchase, the births of the children, and even family holidays had been carefully orchestrated to align with Edward's growing absences. The revelation of the children hit Charlotte hardest. Twins Zara and Yasmin, aged 3, were enrolled in the same prestigious British curriculum school she and Edward had once discussed for their own future children. Their youngest daughter, Sophia, had been born during a period when Edward claimed to be stranded in Hong Kong due to COVID-19 travel restrictions. Leila's life with Edward was well documented on private social media accounts Khalid's team managed to access. The images depicted a starkly different version of Edward, relaxed in traditional Emirati attire, teaching his twins to swim or cradling his newborn daughter in the hospital. This stark contrast to the polished, Western executive persona Edward maintained in Charlotte's world was jarring. The second family's lifestyle, though luxurious, had a distinctly different tone. It was deeply rooted in Dubai's local culture, with family gatherings, religious observations, and traditions filling their calendar. Edward had fully adapted, learning Arabic and participating in cultural customs, creating a seamless double life that Charlotte could hardly fathom. The carefully curated facade of perfection Charlotte had built with Edward was crumbling, replaced by a haunting revelation that would forever change the course of her life. While luxurious, Edward's life with Leila was strikingly different from the glamour and international prestige that defined his life with Charlotte. Where Charlotte and Edward's world revolved around high-profile social events and international jet-setting, his second life was deeply rooted in Dubai's local community. Their opulent apartment, though extravagant, was strategically located near Leila's family compound and the children's school. Their calendar was filled with regular gatherings with Leila's extended family, religious observances, and traditional events. Leila's family's involvement added another layer of complexity. Her father had apparently embraced Edward into their fold, helping him navigate the cultural and business intricacies of the UAE. Photos showed Edward participating in family celebrations, desert outings, and religious festivities. He had fully adapted to this second life, learning Arabic and observing Islamic customs with ease. The financial arrangements supporting this double life proved to be even more elaborate than Charlotte or Khalid's team had anticipated. Edward had constructed an intricate web of offshore companies and trusts, funneling money through multiple jurisdictions to sustain both households. As the investigation deepened, even more alarming discoveries came to light. Certain transactions displayed patterns consistent with money laundering, and evidence began to emerge of larger financial crimes. Edward had apparently leveraged his position at HSBC to orchestrate complex fraud schemes. Shell companies, much like those used to purchase the Alif Towers apartment, were implicated in suspicious transactions spanning Asia and the Middle East. Client funds had been diverted through an intricate labyrinth of offshore accounts, with millions disappearing into untraceable investments. For Charlotte, each revelation was another blow to the foundation of her life. She stopped sleeping, rapidly lost weight, and began suffering from panic attacks. What she had once believed was a perfect marriage was unraveling into an elaborate facade of lies and betrayal. Friends noticed her growing withdrawal, but Charlotte couldn't bring herself to confide in anyone. How could she admit that her sophisticated, successful husband had built an entirely separate life less than 30 minutes away? The investigation revealed more than just a second family. There were other women, too. Business trips that coincided with encounters in different cities, hotel stays booked under aliases, and gifts sent to addresses in London, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Edward's betrayal wasn't confined to a single double life. It was a pattern of systematic deception that spanned continents. As Charlotte delved further into their financial records, she uncovered hidden assets. Properties in Thailand and Malaysia registered under unfamiliar company names, and investment accounts in Switzerland and Luxembourg. The most disturbing find was evidence of massive fraud within Edward's division at HSBC, fake investment schemes, inflated returns, and misappropriated client funds. A final, chilling discovery was made in Edward's private office safe. Multiple passports under slightly altered names, suggesting connections to darker, more dangerous activities. These weren't merely tools to manage his double life. They were sophisticated instruments for evading detection and moving money through illicit networks. Charlotte's mental health spiraled as the enormity of Edward's betrayal became clear. She began documenting everything obsessively: times, dates, transactions, locations. Her home office transformed into a chaotic wall of evidence covered in documents, photos, and notes mapping Edward's labyrinthine deceptions. She barely ate, spending endless hours staring at Khalid's surveillance footage, watching her husband seamlessly navigate his two lives. The final straw came when Charlotte discovered Edward had been systematically transferring their joint assets into accounts she couldn't access. Encrypted emails revealed plans for a transfer to HSBC's Hong Kong office, but without her. The documents indicated that Edward intended to relocate with Leila and the children, erasing Charlotte from his future entirely. In her darkest moments, alone in their sprawling villa, Charlotte began to plan. She knew confronting Edward could be dangerous, not just emotionally, but physically. His criminal connections hinted at a man capable of far more than marital infidelity. She made copies of her evidence, stored them in secure locations, and even consulted a lawyer specializing in international divorce cases. But as the weight of the betrayal crushed her, rage and despair overwhelmed her carefully laid plans. The children she had longed for had been fathered with another woman. The humiliation of her shattered marriage was too much to bear. On the night of February 14th, surrounded by the evidence of Edward's deceit in their home office, Charlotte made a decision that would change her life and the lives of everyone involved. The perfect facade she had once believed in was about to end, not with closure, but with a shocking act of violence that would reverberate across Dubai's expatriate community and make international headlines. The crime scene was meticulously documented, spent shell casings, blood spatter patterns outlining the sequence of shots, and scattered evidence of Edward's double life created a surreal backdrop to the violence. As news of the shooting rippled through the tight-knit Emirates Hills expatriate community, residents gathered police cordons, their murmurs filling the air as they watched crime scene technicians methodically move in and out of the villa. Camera flashes punctuated the darkness, mingling with the rotating lights of police vehicles. Charlotte's behavior in the immediate aftermath puzzled many. She remained eerily calm, almost detached, as officers led her to the police car. When asked if she needed to collect personal items, she responded, "Everything I need to know is in the office." She made no attempt to contact a lawyer, family, or friends. During her initial police interrogation at Dubai Police Station, Charlotte provided a chillingly coherent account of her actions. Over the course of several hours, she detailed her discovery of Edward's second family, his financial crimes, and the events that led to the confrontation. "I couldn't let him leave us both," she confessed. "He was planning to disappear to Hong Kong with her and the children. All those years of lies, watching me endure fertility treatments while he had children with her. I couldn't let him win." The forensic investigation continued through the night. Teams uncovered evidence that Charlotte had lined the office walls with plastic sheeting prior to the shooting, pointing to deliberate planning. The murder weapon, a Glock pistol, was traced to a black market arms dealer, though Charlotte refused to disclose how she had procured it. Within hours, media outlets descended on Emirates Hills. The story had all the elements of a scandal: wealth, betrayal, a secret second family, and murder in one of Dubai's most exclusive communities. Headlines blared variations of "expatriate wife murders banker husband after discovering secret family." Reactions from the community were mixed. Some neighbors expressed disbelief, describing Charlotte and Edward as the perfect couple. Others admitted that, in hindsight, they had noticed signs of strain in Charlotte's demeanor over the past months. The revelations about Edward's second family and financial crimes added layers of complexity to what initially seemed like a crime of passion. Both families were swiftly drawn into the chaos. Charlotte's parents flew in from London, reeling from their daughter's arrest and the exposure of their son-in-law's double life. Edward's family issued a brief statement requesting privacy as they struggled to process his death and the shocking revelations. Meanwhile, Leila Karim, Edward's second wife, went into seclusion with her children. Sources suggested that Leila had been unaware of Edward's first marriage, adding yet another tragic dimension to the case. An autopsy conducted at Dubai Police's forensic laboratory confirmed Charlotte's account of the shooting. The first shot had been fatal within minutes, with the subsequent shots confirming intent rather than self-defense. Toxicology reports showed no substances in Edward's system, indicating he was clear-headed at the time. Charlotte's arrest and processing were handled with discretion, given the high-profile nature of the case and the sensitive financial details it unearthed. Regular updates were shared with both British and UAE diplomatic channels. The investigation quickly expanded beyond the murder to include Edward's financial crimes, which spanned multiple jurisdictions. Charlotte's first court appearance, held within hours of her arrest, was closed to the public. She faced charges of premeditated murder, a capital offense in the UAE. The prosecution presented evidence of her deliberate actions, including the carefully orchestrated phone calls to lure Edward home and the preparation of the crime scene. What had begun as a murder investigation soon evolved into an international scandal. Charlotte's private investigation had unearthed evidence of Edward's fraudulent schemes, sparking regulatory inquiries across multiple countries. HSBC launched an internal audit of all accounts handled by Edward, uncovering irregularities with far-reaching implications. As Charlotte awaited her next court appearance in a Dubai detention center, the consequences of her actions continued to ripple outward. 2 families lay in ruins. A massive financial fraud was exposed, and Dubai's expatriate community grappled with the realization that the perfect lives they admired might be illusions. The complexity of Edward's murder case demanded the full resources of Dubai's police force. Lieutenant Colonel Ahmed Al-Rawi, head of the Criminal Investigation Department, formed an elite task force of homicide detectives, financial crime specialists, and digital forensics experts. Captain Aisha Al-Hashami, a seasoned forensic investigator, meticulously reconstructed the events of that fateful night. Every detail pointed to long-term premeditation, Captain Al-Hashami noted in her report. The plastic sheeting wasn't just to contain evidence, it reflected weeks, perhaps months, of planning. Meanwhile, Sergeant Omar Al-Fahim's digital forensics unit uncovered a trove of evidence from Edward's devices. Multiple phones, laptops, and tablets revealed an intricately compartmentalized system of digital identities. Each device was dedicated to a separate life, one for Charlotte and another for Leila and the children. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that this was far more than a domestic dispute. It was a tragic nexus of personal betrayal, financial crime, and systemic failure, with implications that extended far beyond the walls of the Emirates Hills villa. He maintained completely separate digital identities, explained Sergeant Omar Al-Fahim during a task force briefing. Different phones for different lives, separate social media accounts, even distinct Netflix profiles. The level of organization was astonishing. The financial investigation, however, revealed an even darker layer. Detective Samir Al-Qasimi, seconded from the Financial Crimes Unit, led a team that unraveled Edward's intricate financial web. What they discovered extended far beyond the demands of managing two households. Evidence pointed to a sophisticated money laundering operation that spanned multiple continents. The accounts we uncovered in the Cayman Islands were just the start, reported Al-Qasimi. We identified shell companies in Singapore, Cyprus, and the British Virgin Islands. Suspicious transactions exceeded $100 million. As the investigation expanded, international cooperation became essential. Dubai police worked closely with Interpol, the UK's national crime agency, and financial intelligence units across multiple jurisdictions. The inquiry revealed links to known criminal organizations in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia, suggesting Edward's banking position had been exploited for more than just personal gain. Witness statements painted conflicting pictures of Edward Mitchell. Colleagues at HSBC described him as brilliant yet reserved, always maintaining a professional distance. Domestic staff from both households offered insights into his tightly controlled double life. Maria Santos, the housekeeper at the Emirates Hills villa, revealed that Edward imposed strict rules about his home office, barring anyone from entering, not even for cleaning. The task force pieced together a comprehensive timeline of Edward's activities over the past decade, cross-referencing travel records, financial transactions, and witness accounts. The pattern that emerged was of a man managing a double life with military precision, until Charlotte's investigation began to unravel it all. Tracking Edward's assets became a major focus. Beyond the known properties, investigators uncovered investments in rare art, vintage wines, and cryptocurrency. Many of these assets were shielded behind layers of shell companies and offshore trusts, requiring extensive international collaboration to trace. Family interviews added further context. Edward's sister, Emma, revealed during an interview in London that their father had also led a double life, something Edward had discovered as a teenager. "It destroyed our family," she admitted. "I never thought Edward would follow the same path." The prosecution, led by Chief Prosecutor Khalid al-Shami, built its case around establishing premeditation. The evidence was damning. Charlotte's methodical investigation, the purchase of the weapon, her preparation of the crime scene, and her calm demeanor after the murder all pointed to a calculated act. The defense, led by prominent lawyer Aisha al-Manuri, argued a different narrative. Charlotte's actions were the result of temporary insanity and extreme emotional distress. They contended that the cumulative impact of Edward's betrayals, combined with the trauma of failed fertility treatments and the knowledge that he had fathered children with another woman, pushed her to a breaking point. Cultural considerations also came into play. The case touched on sensitive issues within UAE society, including polygamy, legal under Islamic law but subject to specific conditions, and the challenges faced by expatriates navigating local customs and laws. The trial became an international media sensation, with coverage exploring themes of betrayal, double lives, and the darker side of expatriate privilege. The New York Times ran a feature titled "Death in Dubai: The Perfect Life That Wasn't," while the BBC released a documentary examining the cultural and social dimensions of the case. Expert testimonies added new dimensions to the proceedings. Forensic psychiatrists debated Charlotte's mental state at the time of the murder, financial experts detailed the complexity of Edward's fraud schemes, and cultural specialists provided context on the unique pressures of Dubai's expatriate banking community. Legal challenges abounded. The defense sought to exclude evidence of Edward's financial crimes, arguing it would prejudice the jury and distract from the central question of Charlotte's culpability. The prosecution countered that understanding the scope of Edward's deception was critical to establishing motive. Public reaction was deeply divided. Many in Dubai's expatriate community sympathized with Charlotte, viewing her as a victim of extraordinary betrayal. Others, particularly in the banking sector, expressed concern about the case's potential impact on Dubai's reputation as a financial hub. The case's international implications added layers of complexity. British consular officials became involved due to Charlotte's citizenship. Meanwhile, HSBC launched a comprehensive internal audit, uncovering further irregularities that triggered regulatory investigations. The UAE Central Bank initiated broader reforms to address potential lapses in banking oversight. As the trial progressed, new revelations emerged. A former colleague of Edwards came forward with information about similar schemes at other banks. Investigators also discovered links between Edwards' financial operations and several high-profile money laundering cases in Asia. The inquiry expanded to include regulatory failures that had enabled Edwards' activities to go undetected for so long. For Charlotte's legal team, humanizing her became a central strategy. They highlighted her charitable work in Dubai, her advocacy for women's education, and her previously unblemished reputation. Character witnesses described her as kind, professional, and deeply respected. The prosecution, however, painted a starkly different picture. A woman who had chosen violence over legal remedies, despite having multiple opportunities to report Edwards' crimes or pursue a divorce. By its conclusion, the case had evolved into far more than a murder trial. It exposed vulnerabilities in international banking systems, raised questions about cultural integration, and highlighted the immense pressures faced by expatriates striving to maintain seemingly perfect facades. For investigators, prosecutors, and defense teams alike, the case represented a tragic confluence of personal betrayal and systemic failure, its ramifications continuing to ripple far beyond the glittering confines of Dubai's financial district. As the trial entered its final phase, all involved understood that the verdict would carry implications far beyond the fate of Charlotte Mitchell. On a sweltering July morning in Dubai, the criminal court buzzed with activity. International media, legal observers, and members of both the expatriate and local communities packed the courtroom. Charlotte, noticeably thinner but composed, sat quietly in a conservative black suit as Chief Justice Abdullahi prepared to hear the final arguments. The prosecution's closing testimony centered on Dr. Rashed Al-Jabri, Dubai's leading forensic psychiatrist. His evaluation found Charlotte legally sane at the time of the murder. Mrs. Mitchell exhibited clear planning abilities and awareness of consequences, he testified. Her actions showed precision, not panic. This was calculated revenge, not temporary insanity. The defense countered with Dr. Elizabeth Stanford, a British expert in trauma psychology, who painted a picture of cumulative emotional damage. The combination of fertility struggles, the discovery of the second family, and financial betrayal created a perfect storm of psychological trauma, she argued. Mrs. Mitchell experienced what we call complex betrayal trauma, leading to a dissociative state during the shooting. Jury selection had been particularly challenging due to the case's high profile. The final panel included 4 Emiratis, 3 Western expatriates, and 2 Asian professionals, reflecting Dubai's diverse community. They listened intently as financial expert Samir al-Rashid detailed the staggering scope of Edwards' fraud. The total impact of Mr. Mitchell's financial crimes exceeds $100 million, al-Rashid testified. He didn't just betray his wives, he betrayed financial systems across 3 continents. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict. Charlotte Mitchell was found guilty of second-degree murder, a lesser charge than the premeditated murder the prosecution had sought. The verdict acknowledged the element of planning, but considered the extreme emotional circumstances as mitigating factors. Chief Justice Abdullahi's sentencing statement made international headlines. This court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances that led to this tragedy. However, we cannot condone taking the law into one's own hands. Charlotte was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of deportation to the UK after serving 10 years. The appeals process began immediately. Charlotte's legal team introduced new evidence, including previously undisclosed threats Edward had made when confronted about his second family. They argued that she had acted, at least in part, out of fear for her life. The case's international implications rippled far and wide. The British Foreign Office engaged in quiet diplomacy to ensure that Charlotte served her sentence under humane conditions. HSBC faced regulatory scrutiny across multiple jurisdictions, leading to major compliance reforms. The trial also set new legal precedents in UAE law, particularly regarding how courts consider psychological trauma in crimes of passion. For those left behind, the aftermath was devastating. Leila Karim, now a single mother of 3, withdrew from Dubai's social scene. Her family's influence shielded her children from media scrutiny, but the psychological toll was profound. The twins, old enough to understand some of what had happened, required extensive counseling. Edward's assets became the subject of a protracted international legal battle. The UAE central bank froze accounts linked to his fraudulent activities, while legitimate assets were contested by both Charlotte's and Leila's legal teams. Untangling the financial web he had created would take years. The case prompted significant changes in Dubai's expatriate banking community. Financial institutions implemented stricter background checks and monitoring systems. The UAE central bank introduced new protocols for detecting suspicious patterns in international transfers. Culturally, the case sparked widespread discussions about the intersection of Western and Islamic marriage laws, the role of women in expatriate communities, and the pressures of maintaining social status in Dubai's competitive environment. Support systems emerged in response. The British Business Council established a confidential counseling service for expatriate families, and local women's organizations created support groups for those dealing with marital betrayal and financial abuse. Preventive measures also became a priority. Banks enhanced fraud detection systems, while expatriate organizations developed programs to help newcomers navigate Dubai's cultural and legal complexities. The Mitchell case became the subject of numerous documentaries and books. The BBC's Death in Dubai, the Edward Mitchell story, exposed vulnerabilities in international banking, while Netflix's Double Lives delved into the psychological impact of long-term deception. The effects of the case continued to shape Dubai's legal and social landscape. Law firms reported an increase in inquiries about international prenuptial agreements. Financial institutions strengthened compliance departments, and social service organizations expanded support for expatriate families in crisis. Charlotte Mitchell's story became a cautionary tale in Dubai's expatriate community, a stark reminder that beneath the gleaming facades of success, devastating secrets often lurk. What she had believed was a perfect life had been an illusion, and its destruction had far-reaching consequences. Years after the verdict, a journalist interviewing Charlotte in prison asked if she regretted her actions. Her response was telling, "I regret that it came to this, but Edward destroyed more than just our marriage. He destroyed trust, hope, and the futures of 2 families. Sometimes I wonder if he would have destroyed even more if it hadn't ended when it did." The legacy of the Mitchell case continues to influence Dubai's evolution as a global financial hub. Stricter regulations, better support systems, and heightened awareness of the pressures facing expatriate families have emerged from this tragedy. The case serves as a powerful reminder that success built on deception cannot stand, and that the quest for a perfect life can sometimes lead to devastating consequences.